Why do we not have the logo on the slides at the start? That
I
would
think
make
that's
it so
something we
much
can
easier.
argue about after the video. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
thank you.
Is that a whiskey?
It is not a whiskey. It is a Negroni, and it is the king of cocktails.
Self-made.
Self-made. Yeah, correct. Welcome everybody to the long-awaited episode 3 of the Old World Behemoths podcast. My name is Alasdair. I am a behemoth because I took a dragon to a 1500 point tournament. Alex, introduce yourself. Why are you a behemoth?
Firstly, we need to call out. We were discussing that today in the tournament chat. I don't know if you've caught up on that.
No, I have
threw
not.
a lot of shade at the Dark Elf players. But I called you guys out for being the only ones that wind blast opponents off the board. It's just funny that all the Dark Elf players have done that.
Funny. Introduce yourself, Alex.
Yes, I am a behemoth, mostly because I'm now collecting a new army with lots of them in it.
Very nice. Chris, hello again. Why
Hello.
are you a behemoth?
I'm a behemoth because I play the behemoth army, which is fat ogres.
The true behemoths.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Welcome back, everybody. Good to see you. Tom, our very real-life behemoth, unfortunately couldn't join us today. And it's taken us a little while to get organised. So hopefully we've got enough here today to chat about, to keep you interested, and to crack on. So we'll start by thanking our patrons. As always, you're helping keep Riverside active for us. Death 1942, Ghost Joshua 6, Silver Dave, and Jeff, thank you so much. If you'd like to become one of our patrons, you can find the link in the description of the video or the show notes if you're listening to this on Spotify. Or anywhere else where you get your podcast. Sorry, I shouldn't just limit us to Spotify. Anyway, carry on.
This is true. Well, as usual, we'll quickly recap we normally would say the fortnight in the behemoths, but it's been a bit longer than that. So you're going to have to excuse the age of the videos listed on the photos because they're not quite accurate in that. But lots has happened since the last episode, starting with a TTS battle report, which is on the bottom left, where Alistair and I showcase the Renegade factions in use for a 1,000-point battle report. Maybe world first. I don't know. Maybe they've recorded world first use of demons even. It was a loss. Spoiler alert. Oil washing. We wanted to get that video out. We'd been discussing this for a while. Basically, the beginner's version for oil washing. There's plenty of content out there about how to use oils in an advanced way. But I wanted to record a video about literally the dummy's guide to oil washing, so that you don't need to be scared
Could not have chosen a better person to do it.
That's right. What? It's clearly a dummy.
The biggest dummy we know. Carry on.
Yes. Okay, Tom and I recorded our round 2 of OldHammer, which took the longest time to get out, which showcased our match at the event. We also went through Chris's actually very popular old school reminisce of the old White Dwarf,
so good.
Dark Elves versus Empire battle report. Chris,
Do not ask how many hours that took.
can you just describe to us the advanced technology platform that you use to make that?
It wasn't Paint, just so you know.
Oh, sorry, it was
I used
Paint Advanced.
Paint.net, which is to be honest, it's actually more like Photoshop. But yes.
Okay.
It was fun.
I prefer telling people MS Paint. Finally, we recorded one of the clickbaitiest videos on the speculation on Kislev, which everyone is so distracted by Cathay, we just wanted to do this and get it out there.
We being Alex, in all fairness,
I was so excited.
really wanted to do this, and I do feel
excited.
for those of you who might be listening, keep an eye out for maybe a couple more of these, maybe with a few more clickbaity titles, and to the broader community at large. If people end up coming back and listening to these early episodes, we regret nothing. The next clickbaity video will have a title along the lines of exclusive world first review of X, Y, or Z, and we will not apologize for that because views are good. Views are good.
I can't wait for the follow-up video, which is how much of that video is wrong when Kislev does eventually release.
Yes.
We've got the rest of the army to do. There's a long way.
Oh, we got
a
long way to go, Chris, till that comes out.
Yeah.
So it's plenty of time to accidentally delete the video. We'll see.
Yeah, plenty of time. So like 4 episodes time.
Well, if we want to throw shade at the dwellers below, who actually have just released another episode, shout out to God knows any of them that actually listen to us.
It's good to see them back, actually.
It's been like 5 months.
Yeah.
Boys, what's going on? Like, all these Aussie podcasts have sprung up in that time. Okay, let's talk about it. We're probably last to the party. Let's talk, in this regard. But
Well,
I like to
you
say...
delayed us with the Kislev video, didn't you?
Well, this is true. But like fine wine, we've just aged in our opinions of this release. We decided we're not going to go knee-jerk, we're going to go in. But by God, I don't think anyone was expecting Cathay to drop at the announcement, but let alone the entire army showcase.
I think everyone was expecting Cathay to drop. I'm not sure we expected.
Kislev.
I'm not sure we expected the entire army, but they've given quite a substantial range. I don't think they've shown the entire army because realistically, what have you got? You've got a couple of infantry versions, missile versions, cavalry, a couple of artillery pieces, all dual kits, by the way, from classic Games Workshop style. They'll all be dual kits or multi-function kits to maximize that sales efficiency.
It's worth pointing out, that they didn't. I don't think they did show the ranged units. So the Jade Warriors should actually have an alternate kit with crossbows, possibly guns.
Actually, no. I think you're right. I think there are firearms in the Total War 3 roster system. There's also a whole heap
you're
of
saying
peasant...
dual kit for spears and swords, like a combat dual kit.
I think it'll likely be ranged as well. But the other thing is the big chunks that are missing are the peasant levy units, because there are multiple variations of peasant levies in the Warhammer game, the Total War game, that are totally absent here, which is very interesting.
Yep, and the I can't remember what they're called, the Dragon Warriors, the actual elite.
Yes, the
Celestial,
elites, the true
Celestial
elites.
Guard. Yes, yeah. And as the rumors go, well, actually they're not rumors. I have to take that back. As GW announced in the article, units do get upgrade via a character, which we'll go over at the moment. Now, Tom's not here, right? But there's 2 models in this photo that I think he actually screamed about when they were showcased. Chris, what are they?
Would be the peasants in the back corner there. Because he identifies with them based on his current income is.
Yeah, the giant meaty peasants. Those 2 great big ogre loaders.
First new ogre models for like 10 years or something silly like that.
A very long time.
Yeah.
A very long time. Perhaps a leading indicator if we had any of Tom's prayers to go by.
It is. I mean, I will play cynic here. It is a stretch, given that again they had the opportunity with the Empire Arcane Journal to re-release Imperial Ogres, and we saw nothing. All we saw was models from 2 decades ago being remade as made to order models. So
I think 2 decades is being very generous there.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, definitely. So I don't know.
Now, the other thing to point out here, perhaps we correctly identified in our episode 2, Chris. I think Alistair, you were on baby duty just in this segment, where we said that Big Chungus from the Bretonnia range and the Empire range was maybe the future scale of the old world, thus personified in this release.
That's very
Cavalry
interesting.
definitely do look pretty big.
Yeah, I mean the equivalent. We've obviously done quite a bit of printing and had quite a few models from different ranges, from different designers, I should say, and these strike me as quite equivalent to one of the Titan Forge releases, and they are big, chunky armored cav, and these guys look extremely similar.
Yeah, they're big. They're for sure big, and even on those 25mm bases, I mean, I've got one of the old Phoenix Guard laying around, and he's small on his 20mm base. So for a human, I would say that these are absolutely way bigger.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
look at the size of the ogre in the back versus the loaders. So I'm gonna say, going forward, all the new armies that come out, plural on that regard, are gonna be big. God only knows if Chaos gets re-released and we get Chaos Warriors on huge.
I mean, we'll get there eventually, right? But they've got to take a few armor plates off them first to just represent the heavy armor approach.
Just drop them down to chainmail, right?
No.
That's right.
It won't happen. It can be full plate.
All right. What more do we have to say about Cathay?
We got more. The big boys. So these were obviously the draw. For I think everyone immediately went to this, and that wasn't listed on the previous photo. So if we had to poll, vote 1, big boy. Vote 2, flying boy. Which will sell out first?
I think the lantern.
You think the
100%.
lantern?
Really?
I think the lantern, 100%. No, there is no model that exists in the range that is comparable to that lantern.
Very true.
And from a hobbyist point of view, with the paper that makes up the lantern itself, with the opportunity to stick lights in it, with the opportunity to make it really interesting, I think the lantern... I mean, granted, the Jade Guardians are going to sell, right? But I do think it will depend on the book, because that is a 100 by 150 base, if not bigger.
Yep.
That is a Stone Tusk, a Thunder Tusk or a Stonehorn size base. That is enormous. So I'm not sure when the book comes out whether or not it will be realistic that you'll see more than one of them. I feel like they're going to be in that like 200 plus point behemoth range at this point.
I would hope so. And I will be very mad as somebody who's now got soul grinders if they're 250 points and less, and you can take 2.
Yes, well, let's not talk about demons.
I do think though that the statue on the left, I think you're going to see it in a lot of like golden demon entries.
Oh, for sure.
In the next year or two.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like the paper lantern, especially if you try and do some crazy inner glow effect.
Yeah, like
lantern, that would be
paint.
crazy.
But paint OSL coming from within.
But paint OSL inside the lantern.
Yes.
But the guy on the left, I think, is a little bit easier to tackle, but you can still do some crazy stuff with it.
I would say
definitely.
The dry brush king is the Jade Guardian.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be plenty of people who take the terracotta element of that and really lean into it and make it look properly baked and ancient pottery and all of that sort of stuff. But I do feel, both from a practicality standpoint and from a hobby standpoint, that the lantern will be more popular.
I think it's also good to see that they don't seem to have limited themselves model-wise based on the pace. So I was really worried that this kind of statue would have been, because of, I would say fantasy bases tend to be more narrow than what they should be a lot of the times. I was really worried that he was going to have to be very, 1 foot all the way back or 1 foot all the way forward, and his spear has to be in tight because he can't go too wide. It looks like they've not limited themselves on that.
No. Mind you, that thing's going to be a nightmare to get next to something on the board. Putting him next to a rank of cavalry to try and get him in.
You're not getting a flank charge.
No, that's going to be terrifying.
Okay, now, the big boys are there, but perhaps it's the big girl time.
You have a way with words, Alex.
A true master
So
vocabulary.
if anyone listening, as I'm sure most of the people who have played Old World before or would be interested in exploring Cathay would know, Miao Ying is one of the prime characters. She was obviously one of the 2 dragons that were initially available for Warhammer 3 for the Cathay release.
She's the daughter, correct, of the Eternal
She is
Emperor?
one of the children of the Celestial Dragon Emperor.
Yeah.
She is the one that is responsible for the wall, and so
she's up north.
yeah. So I think that's why she'll obviously. I mean, it's already been in her videos where they've taken the same voice actress and had her do over voiceovers for the videos and things. But this is one of the most interesting models in the range, I feel, because it's 2 different models. And though I think speculation is rampant right now about, mid-battle, maybe you remove her and she changes into the dragon. We were talking about this just before. I actually genuinely feel that you're going to be paying for one or the other. And the switch in between, I understand where that's coming from. You know, from Warhammer 3, you could switch them, but also in that, it was very much you switch them and they choose to switch once. So once per battle, they choose to switch, and then for the rest of the battle, they're in the dragon form. They start in the human, then they go to the dragon. I'm not sure whether they'll replicate that, just given the state of special characters and given the state of everything in the game. I feel like you'll pay for the human version of her, which is much more magically adept, because for, of course, anyone who knows the game, she loses all of her magical abilities, or a big chunk of her magical abilities, when she becomes a dragon. So you'll have the human version, which is magically adept, but obviously less combat-oriented, and then you'll have the dragon version, which still has some magical capability, but it's significantly restricted, but is a behemoth, a dragon, with... They'll share common things. They'll share a ward save. They'll probably share initiative values and leadership values and those sorts of things. It'll really be... The weapon skill will probably stay the same as well. It will be strength, toughness, wounds that may change between the 2 forms as far as I'm concerned. But I do feel that you're paying for one or the other and not being able to have her transform mid-game.
I'm curious to see... with the dragon form, how many wounds it's going to have. Because right now...
I would say 6.
Well, one of the reasons why a dragon character is so good is you're bolting on the dragon's wounds to the character's wounds. So if your character's already at 4 wounds and then you chuck a dragon on it, suddenly you're like 8 or 9 wounds.
Yep.
If she ends up, maybe her foot version is 3 wounds, but then her dragon's like 5 or 6... Is that dragon going to be good? Hard to say, right? Maybe it should get more wounds than that in order to kind of balance it against other dragons. We'll have to see.
I don't know. I don't think the point will be to have her competing special character versus one of the souped up dragon lords that we know that we can create via either generic magic items or race specific. I think she'll be much like Galrak from the Chaos book, where she will probably have 6 wounds. And it's not going to be the most overwhelming profile, but it's enough flavour to have you sort of interested in it. Because, of course, Galrak is a level 4 and a dragon, but you still don't see him. And the reason that you don't see him, certainly in competitive environments, is because you can take bigger, scarier dragons, despite the fact that he's both.
From a lore perspective, the dragons are so key to Cathay as a whole. In fact, arguably, they are the whole reason why Cathay exists.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a shame if this dragon, or possibly her brother, right, or other relatives in the future, if they weren't one of the top dragons, just because of the rules.
Yeah.
It would be a shame.
I think that it's going to be extra spicy, and you're going to choose at the start of the game. So every tournament round, pick either the level 4 wizard form. Well, I assume it's going to be level 4. By the way, she's on a big base there. Looks like she's on at least a 40 by 40 or 50 by 50.
Oh, she is,
in her human form base.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get you level 4 there, and then if you want to, this game against a specific opponent, you change into... You're going to play as a dragon form.
I think you're being extremely generous.
Now, quickly,
yeah.
though, the armor save, like she looks like she's wearing, I hate to say it, full plate.
You have a really skewed view of
she
what
is
full
not
plate
wearing
looks
full
like.
plate.
Well, I don't know if it's me, Alistair. I think it's
dragon-
actually Games Workshop.
I think you can
Because clearly the guys
see,
in full plate aren't wear them.
you can clearly see that the dragon is wearing full plate, mate.
So, a couple of things to point out before we go down this rabbit hole, right? of what armor save are they going to have? Looking at standard parallels, including Galrak, in terms of what they have, yeah, it might be that she ends up with a 3+ armor save because it's standard dragon scale plus a little bit of armor that she's got going on when she's in dragon form.
Yep.
When she's in human form, I don't think it will really. Maybe she gets a heavy armor save, but I don't think it's obviously gonna be better than that. I feel like they're going to share a ward save, and to your point, Chris, around making them the better form of dragon, I would be shocked if these guys didn't have a baked-in ward save, and I'd be surprised if it wasn't a 4+ ward save.
You're going to go 4 up.
I do think it will be
perhaps the yin and yang. Maybe, I don't know. Would that have something to play?
The wounds thing. If you go 5 or 6 wounds, 4 up ward, and then a half decent armor save, that's probably fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's all that about Demon Princes have a 4 up.
It's all about, can you take that first combat without, immediately dying to that stupid Bretonnian Duke? Is basically it.
Definitely, but I'd see her as she's got to have some staying power as the human form, and then she's obviously going to translate a lot of that into the strength as a dragon. So I think both forms will end up having a ward save of some kind. I feel it will probably be a 4+ to accommodate. Maybe she's not quite as tough in her human form as she is in her dragon form. I still think she's going to be toughness 4. Even, like, whatever happens, I think in her human form, she's still going to be toughness 4 to be comparable to, like, the wizard lords of the Empire.
I know you say it's a human form. She is the dragon.
Yeah, I mean,
the dragon is basically just... The human form is kind of like an illusion.
Yeah.
So I could actually see, her stats being a lot higher than what you would expect on foot.
Maybe.
Because it's just an illusion, really.
I think her human form will be designed to go with the Dragon Guardians, or whatever they're called, the unit that she can upgrade.
Yeah.
So to use the language directly out of the unit description for her and the ability description of her to transform. So she has the innate power to transmogrification, which implicates that it is actually a proper human physical form and then a proper dragon form. But we're going way down this rabbit hole, and I don't think we should.
We could spend an hour on this.
We've given our hot takes. Let's keep going.
We've done our hot takes. One final point. Great to see, though, that they're not going down. I know in the game that the dragons in Cathay don't have wings, but it's good to see just variation on the dragon models.
I'm a massive dragon fanboy. I really don't like the current old world dragons. They look so Gumby to me. The proportions are so off. It is so nice seeing a proper modern dragon.
Yeah, a proper sculpted
it's just
modern
a good
dragon.
sculpt.
It's still, I mean, funnily that you should say that, it's still the S shape. So one of the things that they retain, and one of the things that is slightly different from the game, is that the game dragon is much chunkier and also sort of quite more traditionally Chinese dragon shaped. This is a thinner, narrower version of that to maybe put a nod towards the dragon design that has existed in Warhammer Fantasy for decades of that S-shaped dragon. And this is a lot more towards that than it actually does look like in the game. But I agree with both of you. It is so nice to have something that is a bit different. The fact that they've retained that from the design of the game, and it's not just your traditional flying dragon. It's really, really nice.
Yep. Okay. Moving on to some quick rules that have come out from the video, as well as a collection of possibly confirmed rumors, but I think most of these are from the video themselves. Jade Warriors being able to reroll an armor save of 1 when they're stationary. Probably the new Phalanx rule, which keeps being talked about, I would say. Cavalry fight in 2 ranks. Super interesting. Follow-up counts as charging. Thank God. I think that should just be standard for all cavalry. The follow-up should count as charging, especially if it's a horse running at you at 50 kilometers an hour, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a bit of that going around. Yeah.
The artillery, the ogre loader, being able to shoot the cannon twice in turn 1. I don't know how I feel about that. Only because...
Yeah,
but you, as somebody who plays cannons, love it.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily use it turn 1 because people hide shit from you in turn 1, and you're not going to get the opportunity. It's probably going to be turn 2 or 3. But the point that you're getting at, being able to fire twice when the opportunity presents itself, these are going to be great cannons, if not slightly more.
Oh, for sure.
Slightly more damaging than great cannons. Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting. The thing that they haven't really included, which again is a little bit of a takeaway from the game, the Warhammer game, is in the Warhammer game they're pulled by oxen. So all the war machines are actually pulled by oxen, and then they get dragged around the battlefield, and they're slightly faster than the pushed artillery. They've taken that away from both the design point of view and potentially from a rules point of view, in that these will probably be static artillery again. And they're not going to be moving around and shooting like, cannons of the Sky Titans that ogres have access to. But I would take the cannon of the Sky Titans as a template looking forward for these great cannons, because technically the law is they've stolen the cannons from Cathay, and they're now using them.
I did not know that, but that makes sense now. But look at the next line. Cannon slows the units. So shooting twice. I mean, the caveat to this is obviously the ogre loader's it's not gonna be free. I think it's gonna be an upgrade. Oh, it even says ogre loader upgrade. It might help if I actually read.
I'm gonna be pessimistic because I play Chaos Dwarves and we actually have an upgrade like this. And I'm gonna be pessimistic and say it's probably gonna be something stupid like the cannon is like 150 points, and the ogre loader's like 45.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And then you're never, ever going to see the ogre loader, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you say that, but then cannons are 125 points and an engineer is 45, and you're always taking an engineer to boost the cannon, right? So
do they have it?
It might be. It might just be.
Can't they even have engineers?
No, they don't. But it might just be the balance of it.
Let's say you take 2. Are you going to pay 90 points to shoot each one additional time?
I don't know. It depends on their profile, Chris.
Or are you just going to take another cannon?
Don't know.
Yeah.
I think the point around Chaos Dwarves, so I think they'll probably mirror the Dreadquake mortars in taking away swift stride and reducing movement speed. So
that'll be special or rare.
I just hope they don't screw them over like they did with Chaos Dwarves and make the templates actually good, because... Yeah.
Well, that's the next one.
Maybe the rocket battery. Like you do have to take again. They're probably starting from a design standpoint with the parallels, which means the Hellstorm rocket battery from Empire, which we all know is a bit garbage, and the Chaos Dwarf Deathstreaker rocket launcher, both of which have distinct drawbacks. And I think you're not really going to see a huge amount of revolutionary mechanics from that. I think it's going to be somewhere in between.
I really miss it from 8th Ed, but the old Deathstreaker rocket rule was hilarious to play. So it's basically the rocket goes out with scatter dice, and then you keep rolling scatter dice, like I think 2 or 3 more times. So it's like one rocket lands here, next one lands over here, next one lands over here. And it was just a bit chaotic and hilarious. But templates right now are just not really doing it. If the rocket launcher is cheap enough, who cares? But yeah,
it depends. It could have much better ammunition than what we've seen in the Empire one. But Sky Lantern, rare heavy chariot, artillery can use its line of sight for shooting.
Yeah.
Do we care?
Not
really. I think people just want to vibe it for the model and the fact that it's a flying heavy chariot.
It would be hilarious if you could put a character in there. Is all that I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think when they say artillery can use its line of sight for shooting, I kind of feel that they might mean the rocket launcher.
Yeah,
so
it would be like a signaling marshal or something.
Yeah, because purely or we'll see it really quickly comped out by like the guys at Square Based or that sort of thing, if you suddenly end up with the ability to take 3 cannons and a sky lantern, and all your cannons hide behind the hill. And the sky lantern,
sure.
lantern sits above, and suddenly you're being able to just directly shoot everything anywhere on the board.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the Sentinels themselves, rare, no surprise there, but 2 forms: terracotta, providing regeneration, or granite.
3 forms.
Apologies. 3 stones. Better armor save. Warpstone, decrease enemy toughness. Now, he's a chunky boy already, right? So he's probably got full plate armor.
He's got to be toughness 8.
You reckon toughness 8? Toughness.
He's literally made of stone.
No,
I'm calling toughness 7.
I'd say upper limit toughness 7. I think he'll certainly have more wounds, but
7 wounds.
I think the best that you're going to get their base is going to be a 4-up, just representative of what we've seen everywhere else.
That's what I think.
And so a 4-up with regen is fabulous, right? On a big creature like that, it's going to be unbreakable. It's not going to have any instability. It's this big stupid creature which is gonna be really strong, really tough to kill. So 4-up with regen, fabulous. A 3-up then with that high toughness, either toughness 6, toughness 7, is still going to be really good. Maybe between sort of 6 and 8 wounds, and then Warpstone having the ability to have a big debuff. I think all of those are really plausible. All of those are obviously reflected in the ways that you've seen them painted in all of the media imagery.
I think I'm really worried about it because it's one of the coolest models that they have, and there's so many different ways that you could go with it in regards to points and rules, right? You could be like, all right, it's going to be cheaper as a behemoth. Maybe it's sub 200, in which case, it's probably only got a 4 or 5 up save. Maybe it's only toughness 6, right? Or you could go the other way. You could make it toughness 7, toughness 8, 3 up save, give it a ward, but then it's like, closer to like 300 or 400 points. There's so many different ways that they could do it.
Yeah.
My worry is the way that GW sometimes goes is they go, oh yeah, we can go either way. We're going to go bang in the middle, and it's going to be the worst of both worlds.
No, or they go the giant Chaos Spawn route and just go
super cheap.
For the base Sentinel, and then it's 180 something points for this absolute broken. No way. I'm calling 200.
So. I also think they're going to be 0 to 1 for 1,000 points. To be honest. And they'll very likely be a rare slot. So
they've already called it their rare.
Although if they want to sell kits, probably don't do the 0 to 1. Just saying.
Well, or just do the points limit for 250.
I don't think 0-1's going to stand in a lot of people's way if they're wanting to buy multiple Jade Guardians.
A little side tale from AOS. An army was basically redone. This is a couple of years ago, and it was it was a full dragon army, right? So you had big beefy dragons as the characters, and then little dragons with riders on them. I saw a guy in Sydney buy 8 boxes of the big dragons and about 16 boxes of the small dragons.
Mm-hmm.
You can only run maybe 3 of the big dragons and maybe 8 boxes of the small dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But he went out and did it anyway.
Well, like I said, it's not going to stop people. And I will correct myself and correct us generally. These are Terracotta Sentinels, the big guys.
Yeah.
That is their official name.
Yes. Okay, moving on. We're going to skip the Shigengan Lord, which is just a generic...
That's standard. That's exactly what you'd expect to see.
Now, Mao Ying can transform into the dragon at will. We spoke about this. We're debating the at-will use of the word, right?
I think it's too chaotic to both play and play against.
Yeah.
If that character is swapping between a dragon and a foot,
every turn.
It would be if they're going to reflect the video game rules, it would be once. So she starts in human always, and then she can change into a dragon once, probably at the beginning of one of her turns, or in a sub phase of something to stop her from being crazy, being able to transform and then immediately charge. Like I think there'll be maybe some sort of player protection in there, but even if it is that she can transform, it will be once, and then she'll be stuck in dragon form. So it's probably going to be she's a level 4. She transforms into the dragon. Your opponent loses his level 4, or their level 4, and then is suddenly stuck with a flying dragon.
A dragon flying around. Yep. Could go that way. All right, we could discuss this all day, I'm sure, but let's keep moving.
Yes, let's.
Into my favourite topic. My favourite topic.
Oh, is it Kislev again?
It is.
No, it's Vampire Coast. It's Vampire Coast.
It's what are we thinking
Vampires.
about what else is next. Now, we did hint at this with the Kislev. It's got to be guaranteed, right? Like, they've already showcased right back at the start of when Old World was announced. The Ice Guard sculpts were in progress. I think they've been done for a while. The only thing that's holding me back about saying that they're going to be the next army after Cathay is that Cathay are technically a good guys army, and Kislev would back end into
Cathay is very
that.
neutral. Very neutral.
Some say two kings are neutral.
I think I'm inclined to agree with Alex. While they're neutral on the affairs of the rest of the old world, they're still very anti-chaos, right?
Yes.
Their whole shtick is anti-chaos, and then you go into their history and you're looking at Skaven invasions and all those sorts of things. Yeah. So in terms of forces of order versus forces of chaos, they're very much on the forces of order side. I see where you're coming from, but outside of those pirate ships on the map. And we're going to talk about the map in a couple of minutes. But outside of those pirate ships on the map, there is no indication of any Vampire Coast faction.
That's why I titled this Total War, Alistair, on this slide. Because the only thing is that our favourite friend, Jav Goro, on the rumour forum, which has been reasonably accurate, has come out and have said that vampires are not coming back in the way that we know them. And to me, that means they're coming back in a new way. And so, maybe we don't know. But to me, the IP from Vampire Coast is there to be explored. I mean, Cathay 10 years ago was like, this fiction of imagination. And now we have a release.
I think my issue with that approach, and I'll lead into the Kislev thing afterwards, is that if you think about where we are in terms of geographically in the old world.
Yep.
Yes, there are some Vampire Coast factions in that area, but they're also further west.
Agreed.
Doing their own thing. Yep. And that whole ocean is to the west. I think what we're leading towards, and I think the reason why Kislev wasn't done at the same time as Cathay, in terms of like a release, is I think they've realize that they probably need to move the timeline on a little bit quicker than what they thought they would have in the past. They need to probably start to introduce chaos back in properly with demons, and that is logically going to go to Prague, right? Not necessarily that siege, because I think it's been attacked many, many times before. I'm pretty sure there's an earlier, smaller demon incursion that happens in I want to say 50 years in the future or something. They could pivot into that straight away and go, hey, we're going to really open up the old world even further. Here's Kislev, Siege of Prague box, and here's some demons that they're fighting.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be with Asavar Kul, who's the...
Well, he is the Ever-Chosen at the time.
The Ever-Chosen of this timeline. And I think they've even hinted at that in a couple of things. So, but talking about the map itself, I totally stole this out of Gomo and Andrew's video that they've just released about it as an idea to quickly talk about. Now, this is the classic map, but GW just sneakily updates it from time to time, right? So we're just going to move away from Total War for a second and focus on one of the other rumors that's been discussed about, which is the quote-unquote Southern Realms, or the Border Princes, as we like to say it. But there's a lot of symbols here. Including, by the way, a shield with a bear on it. I don't know. What are we saying? What are we saying, Alistair?
A lot of, I mean, again, people with access to the Total War game would recognize a lot of the traditional heraldry here. You've obviously got Bretonia that just gets fleshed out with the current baronies. You've got the Empire map, which has already been revealed in terms of what's inclusive in that. You've got the dwarf realms all filled in, which is great. You've got elves now showing up, which is an interesting implication given the traditional timeline and storyline of what's happening at the time. Other than the Kislev dude, which they've just thrown in there as hey, there's a dude from Kislev romping around the border princes collecting taxes. I feel like there's not a huge amount here which is revelatory. You're seeing, again, you got the stupid pirate shit in the Tillian Sea, but there's just not a lot that jumps out at me and goes, this is a revolutionary way of looking at the old world. Everything's still very much in its place. The border princes are structured in the way that you'd expect them to be. You've got Tilia there to the south, which has just been fleshed out with maybe a few city-states, and then Estalia off to the west, which is totally ignored. I don't know. I mean, it would make sense to try and base some sort of campaign or book or something in the Border Princes in the lead up to a Chaos invasion. They're clearly, by updating this, trying to draw attention away from the north and away from all the other bits and pieces that they're looking at. There's obviously nothing in the World's Edge Mountains that would indicate Skaven or ogres or Chaos dwarves as you go further east. The big undead strongholds are very tentatively addressed. There's just nothing in a lot of it. I mean, even above Blackwater, which is where Sylvania sits, where Mootland is, you just not got anything. So I think they're just being strategic based on the factions that they have available and trying to figure out how the players are working in the environment, rather than any of this being some sort of massive scheme or teaser that is going to lead us to a world defining revelation.
Well, it would be interesting because I think there's been some discussion about it being another faction, whereby I don't know if it would be because you're adding another human faction rather than it being just perhaps a different take of combining some Empire elements, some Bretonian elements, and bringing them together, right? I mean, I can only think about the Squarebase survey, which came back and said the most unplayed faction, to everyone's surprise, was not Dogs of War, was Demons. So coming back to Dogs of War, is this where we'll see them return, not perhaps as the Dogs of War themselves, but as a reflection of, here's a set of armies of infamy where you can play Tilia, where you can play someone from the Border Princes, an exiled warlord in the Border Princes.
The way that they did the Arcane Journals is ironically perfect for those kind of things, those really minor factions. I actually don't think the Arcane Journals were that good for the main factions. I think we really needed to see a bit more meat on the bone in terms of that. But if you had an Arcane Journal, Talia, and it's like 2-3 armies of infamy, that like change up the style, and it literally goes, this is basically an Empire army, but you got these special bombards and you get these special units. Like that's fine, I think.
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing that this focus sort of pops up for me, and realistically this map and all the discussion around the Border Princes and everything else, is that what you've got in an extremely small corner of the old world are elves, a Bretonian errantry crusade, a Kislevite army, dwarves, orcs, who else is down here?
What is that symbol in the Lagoon of Tears? The Hydra or dragon shield. That's an oddly shaped shield. It's not a high elf shield.
That one, I'm not entirely sure. It could be Norscan, could be pirates.
Right.
So it could be Warriors of Chaos.
If I wasn't sharing my screen.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's above the Lothern shield, slightly off to the left. So the serpent. I think that's Warriors of Chaos. So you've got all of the factions, and they've just gone, hey, they're going to hang out in the Border Princes, and they've already teased with lore that, Khemri is there as well. Tomb Kings are there. That little shield above the Badlands. Like, you've got something from the lore that said that Cetra is now roaming through the Border Princes chasing artifacts.
Is that? I thought that was the dwarves.
It could be Barrack Var. I thought it was Khemri, but maybe Khemri is.
I think
it's usually blue. I think.
Well, it could be Khemri off to the left, off to the right near the Silver Road.
I think that's a dwarven trading post.
But either or, the lore has already explained a bunch of really incongruous leaders are hanging out in the Border Princes right now, and it's a little bit frustrating to me for them to say we're going to create this world just prior to the Chaos Invasion, the massive Chaos Invasion, which is, a defining part of the old world history, and then we're going to waste a whole edition buggering around in the Border Princes as a way of trying to expand factions or sell models.
I'm sure they're the first to admit that if they knew what the success was going to be like, they would not have taken this approach. I'm sure in their heads they were going, it'll be an okay side game. A couple of people will play it, sell some old models. We don't need to put as much effort into it as we do like the main games. And then this roaring success has hit them, and suddenly it's like, we've probably taken the wrong approach here. We need to start pivoting it now. I mean, like, my lore memory is fuzzy because I read the books a very long time ago, but like having high elves roaming around in this part of the world is
it does make
kind of
an
an affront because the whole War of the Beard was about that, right? They got kicked off the old world, really. And to have all of the high elf factions just roaming around is kind of like...
They're looking for trading partners.
That's also the frustrating thing for me for the timeline, and we're going to call back to Dark Elves now because I'm always going to find a way to build it back into the conversation.
Where are they on the map? Can you just point them out?
Correct. So the Chaos Invasion, it synchronizes with a Dark Elf invasion of Ulthuan when Malekith is coming back, and the Battle of Finneval Plain, which sees Malekith then thrown into the realm of chaos when he loses to Teclis. But the whole thing about the cycle of lore to this point has been Teclis has gone against the lore masters in the White Tower and gone over to the Empire to teach them how to use magic properly and establish the wizarding colleges and all of that sort of stuff. And he's done that with a really small group of elves. So there are no big elven forces rampaging around. The elves don't do anything with the old world. There's very little trade. There's not a lot happening at this point. It's only after Teclis's intervention here that any of that stuff starts opening up that would justify it for the 8th Ed world and those sorts of things.
I think technically lore-wise, in the exact time that we're in the old world, he hasn't actually established.
No, he hasn't. No, absolutely not. No,
he's. But they have access to all the magic laws.
Yeah, he doesn't
even pop up. He doesn't even pop up until Magnus the Pious is emperor.
Yeah.
So Magnus the Pious is still ages away in this timeline.
Yeah. It is funny that, like all of that we just discussed, and it's like, oh yeah, High Elves are a core faction.
Yeah.
And like, if you're gonna do Old World again, obviously High Elves are a core faction because they were one of the most popular armies. Their models are beautiful, and it's just nostalgia bait. But like, to know that ahead of time, and then to go, we're gonna base our entire game in like the southwest part of the Empire, and you're like, sorry, what? Do you wanna?
It'll change.
Run that by me again.
I feel, I definitely feel there's a missed opportunity where they could have gone. They could have almost split the game in two story-wise and gone, the old world is happening. These are all the factions in the old world. But then there's also all of the kerfuffle that happens in Ulthuan, in Nagaroth, and in Lustria, which could include a whole stack of legacy factions. And maybe maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, and eventually in 5 to 10 years' time we see the re-release and they finally get to the Chaos Invasion and they go, hey, it's edition 3 and we're also reintroducing Nagaroth, Ulthuan, and Lustria.
Well, I'm desperate to see that first Cathay lore drop. To be like
that's going to be really interesting, isn't it?
And Cathay army teleports to the Badlands, and one of the dragons is there for some reason, who's meant to be, by the way, holding that that wall.
The wall
against chaos. And what? They're in the southwest part of the old world.
Maybe it's quiet.
What are we doing?
Maybe it's quiet because demons don't exist, Chris. The demon armies don't exist.
But
they do exist.
I think, I feel like you also have to recognize that the wall is like adjacent to the realm of chaos, like the Northlands, right? Yeah. It's not like the wall in all of Cathay's lore and all the stuff that they've spoken about and all the stuff they've intimated in the new videos. It's not like the wall is there for giggles. Like the wall is a massive part of their defense and their culture and everything else. I feel like maybe they get lazy and they say it's a trading caravan, Chris, and it's part of all
like
of that.
The
that
Kislev dude on the map.
But
I would fully accept that if you didn't have the dragon.
Well, that's
that you got the dragon,
that's
Chris,
the problem.
Whoa.
Then there's also in the, and I've spoken about this in a previous video, and I promise I will shut up. But there's also in the Cathay lore at around this time when all of the problems are arising in the old world, because they've been pretty bald-faced about it in that this is that period in 200 years past when all of the things were happening, but at this time, there's also like a Yellow Turban Rebellion style thing happening in Cathay, and it's this monkey emperor because the Grand Celestial Dragon Emperor has gone silent, and his kids are trying to figure out what's going on. And then there's this monkey emperor, which ends up being a Herald of Tzeentch, which rules in a part of Cathay, and they're fighting this thing. So I don't know. I'm also very curious and very keen to understand what that lore drop means with this map and with the world as a whole, because you can't accept that Cathay is a part of this without also accepting that huge block of land between Cathay and the Emperor and the Empire and all of the races that inhabit it, which are all legacy factions.
I'm going to move us on.
Yes,
move us on. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. But I will have the final word, which is
typical.
That the only pro point about this being an army is, quickly, Chris, Cathay, are you buying it?
Definitely leaning towards buying it.
Okay, that's a yes. Yeah. Alistair?
I have STLs that I can use for it.
That's a yes. That's conceptually a yes. Tom, we're going to say yes, okay? I'm going to say no because I'm waiting for my Kislev. Maybe the STLs that I print for you actually end up in my...
You've got 150 demon models to print and print.
That's right. Now the point to that is, I think Cathay is going to be the biggest Games Workshop release that they've had in a long time.
Yeah,
like
for
financial
sure.
wise. Like even 40k players are going to look at that and go, ooh.
I do think it's going to be funny when you rock up to the first probably 3 or 4 events after the release, and 50% of the playing field are going to be Cathay.
Yep. Yeah, and me with my demons, so it's more appropriate. Yeah. Speaking of which, the Copium slide in its finest. Talking about the factions surrounding that, we have the ogres, right? We have an ogre model that's already in existence. Ogres are hanging around the World's Edge Mountains. They, as you say, steal cannons from Cathay to make their own. Could they come back? Maybe.
Should they come
back? That's a yes from you.
There's
to
also
the right-hand side, the demons.
Yeah. Well, Bulwark. That's where I feel they come in here, where it's going to be more around the Cathay focus and what's going to happen here, because they've also been pretty clear as far as the lore setup goes for this time period in videos, interviews, and in text to this stage. They've said the winds of magic are not as strong and cannot sustain demon invasions. So the most likely place you're going to see a demon invasion is going to be Cathay, because they're fully adjacent to the realm of chaos. The Bulwark is there to fight off demon invasions specifically. I think if they're going to re-emerge, it's going to be in some form of partnership with Cathay.
I think if I was writing the books, and I'm not an author, so take this with a grain of salt, I would split it. Actually split the world into thirds. So to the far east, as I'm introducing Cathay, I'm also going, here are ogres, here are some of the demons, because they do kind of inhabit that part of the world. Maybe even sprinkling Chaos Dwarves in there. because again, they're in that part of the world. Obviously, you got your main factions in the middle doing their thing. Then I'd go far west, and I go, here's lizard men, here's dark elves, with high elves doing some stuff, and just like re-expand the world out to where it should be, and reintroduce things. I would write the books as, here's some new units or new fluff for an existing army. Here's some legacy armies that we've just brought back with some updated rules and possibly some updated models here and there, and a proper campaign so that you can actually expand the lore a bit. So like, not an Arcane Journal, a much beefier book. Maybe close to 100.
I kind of feel like
pages.
you're onto something there, but I think the way that we're going to see it is in editions. And so I feel like the next edition that we see, whenever we see it, will probably do almost exactly that. It'll update rules for core factions. It will reintroduce a very limited handful of legacy armies, and it will pivot the focus over to somewhere else. Whether that is over to the west with the elves or over to the east with Cathay. Maybe with the introduction of Cathay as an army, it does pivot east and it goes, here are ogres, here are demons. These are factions that we're going to need for the extended storyline later, but this is how they're positioning it with that. They're clearly taking their time, despite the breakneck pace releasing Arcane Journals and getting something new and a new sort of feeling to each of the factions. They're taking their time. It's not like we're seeing full edition army updates. The Arcane Journals are not that.
It's hard to say because I've been involved in developing other games, other miniatures games in the past. And I know that the lead time on a lot of products was close to 18 months.
Yeah.
As in that's
easy.
From when you finalize the design, you finalized everything, and you start production.
Yeah.
I don't know if books are the same. They're probably a little bit shorter, but they're probably still like 12 months. So if they started to write a new edition or new rule books or new campaign books, literally when Fantasy first dropped, like the old world, we're only just seeing the end of that kind of
Absolutely.
period. And so we could still be quite a way away.
Well, this is why I think it's going to be Kislev next, because we know that they were made. So probably Kislev and Cathay were made at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, what's the cycle of releases now? It's every 3 months, right? Effectively for
sometimes faster.
But
The gap between High Elves and Empire was like 6 weeks or something like that.
This is true, but it's been 6 weeks since the Empire release, and we haven't seen a new Arcane Journal, right?
Actually, in terms of cycles, it is interesting to discuss that because GW kind of have a bit of a set pattern now, and I'm going to get the timings wrong because I haven't looked this up, but I think they roughly do a 3-year cycle for their main games. And we're due a 40k edition next year. And then you get like an off game in the year after, and then you'll get another probably edition of AOS after that.
Yeah.
And so they kind of do that like alternating all the way through.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that. I don't think we're going to see anything. We are absolutely not going to see anything revelatory this year. No. We may see something next year in terms of spoilers and a bit of a drum up for what the next view looks like. But it seems extremely unlikely to me, and given the things that the rumor mill is churning out at the moment, that we're going to see a revival in the next 18 months of any legacy faction. And it's probably going to take a new edition to get us to that point. And in the meantime, we have things like Renegades, which can keep us trundling along and maybe not distort the scene too much. But I'm also kind of concerned about what happens when the Arcane Journal cycle is done, and you've got all the core factions that have something a little bit different, but there is nothing new. And maybe that's what they're relying on Cathay and Kislev for. Maybe it is those as here's something new to sort of keep you interested and engaged and going.
We haven't.
But
sorry, you finish your point.
Yeah, I mean the armies have already started, and I say this with great reluctance, but the armies from the initial Arcane Journals have already started to very much get stale, and there is lots that you just don't see.
There's two things that I'd like to see. And this is just pure wish listing here. The first one is for balance reasons. I would like to. So in Age of Sigmar, we call them the General's Handbook, and we again, off the top of my head, I believe we're getting one a year now. These are big balance changes to the game. They come out, they give us new missions, they sometimes update rules on units, but the big one is they also pretty much redo points across the board. They don't have to do much, just tip the scales a little bit here and there on units, and suddenly, ogres, let's say, they were just spamming Iron Guts for 12 months. They come in, they tip the scales on a couple of other units, suddenly, Iron Guts, like less of them are being taken, and suddenly all these other units are taken, and things get shaken up. I would love to see something for fantasy. Personally, really want to see missions change. Like, I think we're super spoiled where we play in Blacktown, where those boys are happy to actually give us interesting missions. And then the second thing that I really want to see, other than the balance adjustments, is I want to see a return to the old campaign stuff that we saw in, like, I want to say,
I'd really like that.
6th ed, 7th ed. Like, to actually have, here's a series of books, which, for me, big one, advance the lore, right? Yep. And not necessarily push it forward, but just go, hey, we're going to look at this specific part of the world, and we're going to really broaden our understanding lore-wise of what's happening here. We're going to really drill down over here. Introduce some cool characters, right? Because we don't really have much to go off right now.
No.
Yeah.
You could do almost as many books as you want, and that's new content, that's interesting content, pushes the story forward and leads us into a new edition.
Yeah. Chris, I would say that I would prefer the points to come from Games Workshop, because I would say the general crowd is TOs, do what you want with missions, but there is an absolute kickback on fan-made points adjustments. So we need GW to take a vested interest in doing at least, surely once a year is not hard.
I will caveat that, though, and say that if you release a mission pack like the one that we were playing, which really pushes infantry blocks, that kind of impacts the decision making on points a little bit.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you go, the missions skew towards a certain type of unit being good, by default, its value goes up.
Yeah.
Even if its points maybe weren't great before.
Yeah, I feel like that's a change that's going to be made by TOs. So I get where you're coming from. I think the choices around unit changes need to be slightly more independent than that, and maybe based on a little less of competitive scene or niche scene play, because the other thing that we have to recognize is that our environment is so bespoke, and there are, you could go to 6 different gaming locations in Sydney alone and get 6 different variations on the game that are quite different. Whereas, from what we understand about the United Kingdom or, the other little hotbeds of the old world, it is very much one form of play, and it's everyone is sort of accepting, whether or not it's the right way of accepting given the rules interpretations that we've covered before. Either way, it seems a lot less that there is this really tailored approach or this quite niche approach to game design or tournament design that we have here, where it is just so fundamentally different, and it absolutely changes our way of approaching things. And I think that's obviously the intent behind forcing us to steer away from net meta lists that are X, Y, or Z things constantly dominating, constantly winning. And I admire that very much around the Blacktown guys, that they're wanting to change and they're wanting to shift things. And the 2+ guys are the same. They're constantly exploring different variations to try and figure out what's going to end up being popular or what's going to shape the game in the way that they want it. But I don't think it's the same everywhere else.
Yep. Now, I'm so glad you brought this up, because
oh yes,
the next event is coming out. Well, sorry, I should say it has come out. In fact, it's pretty much sold out.
38 people?
38 last check.
Yeah, huge.
I'm calling it 40. Michael's saying max 40. I'm saying max 45. To people. maybe max 50. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll just upsell it until it comes out.
It's agreed to individually review every single list. So
Correct.
well done, Alex. Well done, Alex.
Specifically the Dark Elf lists. Yep. Any of the Dark Elf lists need to come to me first. And the Bretonnian lists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You send them to me. I'll let you know if they're going to get rejected by the TO, which is another made-up rule that I've put in there, just to make sure that people are playing with the correct vibes, especially those that I'm grudged into in the first round. So, take us through some of the key changes that we can see here on this page, Alistair.
Sure. So, much as we've discussed previously, the Blacktown guys are taking a relatively strict approach to comp in that they're not wanting to see big dragon lists as a consequence of my domination of a 1500 points tournament with a dragon. They're not wanting to see...
And wind blasting people.
And, yeah, all right, and wind blasting
you weren't the
other
first.
dragons.
You weren't the first.
Wind blasting
You weren't
other
the first.
dragons off the board.
Yeah. Other Dark Elf dragons are allowed
Yeah.
to be wind blasted off the table.
Only Dark Elf dragons, fabulous. Yeah, I suppose the big call-outs, rule of three, is always one that they seek to apply because it tends to make a lot more sense. Big change. Characters, 25% total armor size. Total army size. This was mirrored in the last tournament. Thank you, but it was slightly different. The Renegades pack,
1,000 points, 2+ boys, right?
Yeah, correct. So it's obviously a little bit more restrictive. So this is 2,000 points. Can't spend more than 500 points on characters. Period. You can spend 500 points on a character if you really want to on a dragon, but you're not going to have two.
495 Chaos Dragon.
Yep, but you're not going to have two. And
or a wizard.
You do that, and perhaps you're balancing off the ability to have a level 4, which, as we all understand, at 2,000 points is hugely impactful. So. Big shift there. We're going to see a lot more units. We're going to see a lot more maybe specializations. I feel like this does drive things towards Death Stars. But the other thing to point out as I was getting to, Renegades are going to be in play. So we're going to have a 38 person tournament, potentially more, up to 50 as Alex has promised. Heard here first.
Could be 100.
100 people tournament that Alex has promised.
Val Heffelfinger will
Sydney,
personally be there.
100%. The entire Blacktown RSL is just going to be tables taken up by us. But Renegades in play.
Yeah.
I think that's already caused quite a stir among the players on the WhatsApp that everyone's very excited to be doing it. I myself am much more likely to be running Dark Elves again rather than straying back into Empire for this particular tournament, and we'll have to see how that goes, just purely based on what I can get painted in time.
Yep.
But
aren't all your Dark Elves painted? What do you mean?
Well, correct.
We're just ignoring your pseudo stopgap army.
My flirtation with Empire Knights of the White Wolf. That's still coming. I'm churning my way through them, but I need a lot more things printed before I can get any further on that. But yeah, it's going to be super exciting. It's going to be
and we
big
should
changes
point out
to the way that we're traditionally playing.
That mission-wise, we don't have it here. We'll go through another video and probably when we
In the
talk
lead
about
up to
our
the
army
event.
lists. Is that, again, infantry focused with standards. Table quarters need to have standards for scoring purposes. First mission, control 2 towers in the middle of the board, which you have to be under unit strength 10 to control. They're utilizing the rules from the rule book about being able to take the tower, so you have to have flying or infantry to even assault it, but only to occupy it can be infantry. So with that spare 500 points, I hope we see these little pop-ups of 10 Iron Breakers, Josh, hinting at that. Might come out.
Curious to see with the Renegade Legacy Pack how many people who were very heavy on a particular army in the last few OldHammer events are going to pivot to, my old favourite is suddenly back on the table. Your Skavens, your Lizard Men. You're literally
pointing at Alex while you're saying this as he's reintroducing demons. But go on.
He didn't He didn't give a toss about demons until that pack came out. Just so you know.
This is not true. This is not true.
This is not true. I have the much beloved 6th Ed Warriors of Chaos Codex sitting beside me at night, which I
with your
like
full
to
plate Chaos
sleeps.
Warriors.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Tick us over to the next slide because I know there's one more thing that we want to talk about here.
Yeah.
And interesting.
Which is, I think, actually the bigger change.
Yeah. So Alex mentioned that there's an emphasis in all of these missions on banners, in units being able to be the scoring unit. So it goes banners, then musicians, then unit strength, and banners, as everybody knows, when you defeat a unit with a banner in combat, when you wipe that unit out or force it to flee, you steal the banner. So banners award you 50 points per banner, 50 victory points per banner, which means by dint of just putting more emphasis on banners, there's going to be more victory points ultimately expected to be scored by both sides by dint of units that had previously not had banners now have banners.
Or have gone MSU.
Yep.
With banners.
Correct.
Yep.
So the victory points difference has changed for a draw from the previous pack where it was up to 149 points. 0 to 149 points was a draw. Now it is 0 to 249 points. 100 points difference. I think perhaps in acknowledgement of the fact that standards are going to be a lot more prone to being stolen and accommodating that sort of points difference. And so it's not going to be as dramatic a shift for someone who loses 1 or 2 small standards units in the same way that it could have been if that draw distance was much as it was in the last tournament. And there's one more change that is impactful that I think one of you two should talk to.
Thank God. And maybe I should, because I was a guy that did bring almost a 30 dwarf block to the last event in the Death Star, which is, what do we do with the absolute feel-bad moment at the end of the game when you finish, you might have scored a few points, you've put in 8 wounds on Alice's unkillable dragon, and you've scored nothing. Which has happened to me a lot. I don't know, maybe it's me with my 25% win rate. Is that you no longer, sir. If you get a unit, a monster, chariot, a multi-wound model, whatever it might be, below 50%, you're going to be scoring those. You're going to be scoring 50% of the points, which again is great. And again, an acknowledgement to the guys that changing the VP difference means that we're going to be layering on much more points here and there. Alex Brown from 2 Plus talks about the fact that draws suck, they're not the purpose of the game, which again, this is being brought in to absolutely try and avoid draws where possible, but make it so that if you do fight for a draw, maybe it is that final couple of crossbow shots onto that behemoth that gets that 1 extra wound that then gives you 300 points off, 250 points off the dragon.
Slightly concerned about the 2 undead armies with this rule. And the reason for that is because I played one in the last event.
Yep.
They can build in such a way where you will struggle to kill even 1 unit. And potentially by the end of the game, they might not even have anything below 50%.
Yeah. Totally agreed. The caveat I believe that they're going to go for is you have less characters rezzing. I'm not saying it's infallible, but absolutely, if you have a unit of 40, 50 Graveguard, even 1 or 2 Necromancers raising and the Scepter allowing them to raise a second time means that it's going to be quite hard to get points. I feel though, Chris, that Tomb Kings, Vampire Counts, just generally don't care. Just don't care about comp. Like they're just that fundamental flaw can only be fixed by changing that mechanic.
Yeah, I agree.
Itself.
I think the healing mechanic is problematic in many ways. So in other game systems that I've played, in order to counteract that kind of a rule, instead of it being look at the units at the end of the game and go, are any below 50%, that's what you score, you would actually keep a tally of the wounds that you've done. And so those undead guys can sit there and they can res their 50,000 skeleton horseman archers all they want. I'm still scoring some points from that. But being able to heal things is tricky in a game where you need to kill things to score points, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's so big a problem right now, community wise or outcomes wise, that it necessitates something like that. I think it's absolutely a style of play, much like Avoidance Wood Elves, as we've talked about before, which can be super unpleasant to play against, but I don't think it's invincible. And I also don't feel with the changes now to 25% character comp, I feel like it's going to be distinctly limited in terms of the efficacy of how a lot of that's going to work, because taking one of the big level 4s and then a bunch of the smaller dudes who are able to res off leadership 7, it's a lot of points to sink in for that capability. And then if your opponent gets moderately lucky or is building something with massive amounts of attacks because they feel like that's their best approach to defeating behemoths or that sort of thing. Not talking about anyone in particular, but which else? But I think, I don't think it's quite so big a problem yet, as any TOs will probably step forward and go,
I agree.
This will be a change.
The 25% character change is, like, in so many ways, it shakes up the meta in a much more a positive way, I think.
I think so.
You're right, like, they can't really spam too much rezzing compared to what they could before. I still think if I was to do a new edition of the game, I'd think about how I'd redo that whole resurrecting mechanic. Right?
I feel like even just changing it back to a magical ability,
a spell,
like changing it back to a spell, makes it
to a spell.
So much more palatable, because then suddenly you're competing for it. This is you're not even competing for it. You're rolling your 7, and if you get your 7, then so be it. You just get whatever it is.
They sometimes forget that the undead already have amazing army rules, which is like they're unbreakable, right?
Fear, unbreakable.
If I have a block of infantry that are cheap, and I know that they can withstand at least one turn of combat, the fact that they don't cop any leadership issues, they don't break, right? I'm paying points for that. I'm paying points for that every day of the week. On top of that, if you add in like the resurrecting stuff, it's just so many layered army buffs that maybe they don't quite need all the time. But
we'll see it play out, right? And I think about the fact that in these scoring differences, I want to bring a greater demon of whatever chaos god I end up going for. I think I'm going to give away 50% of the points in every game.
Yeah.
Because they're toughness 6, in most cases with a 5-up invul with 6 wounds. Mm-hmm. So even a couple of lucky archer shots can score you 250 points. So I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, demons, oh my gosh, this sucks for demons. But then again, it sucks for everybody else as well, right? Like that Bretonnian Duke with everything on it, or Baron, which is immune to multiple wounds and all that. You don't even need to auto kill him. You just need to do a few wounds to him, and then you'll still get points. So have to remember and keep in mind that what might feel like an affront to my greater demon, it is also me coming back. Maybe I go the greater demon of King Fat himself with a built-in ogre blade at -3.
Just to get those extra wounds through.
Yeah, just push wounds through. So we'll see.
But
fully supportive.
I will say one last thing on this particular scoring stuff. It is in the players pack, because of how they build the missions, you can end up on a 10-10 draw, but then because of the missions, go all the way up to, I think in some missions, 14-10. So we, as a group, because of how they score, we aren't actually going to end up with many draws. Possibly none. We'll see. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Agreed. Okay. Now we're going on to
Death Stars, right? This is the Death Stars section.
hobby.
This is the Death Star section of the evening. So,
what is that model? I don't think I've ever seen it in the middle.
You've never seen the
That was a
Cauldron
joke
of Blood?
because it was
Right,
unplayable,
okay.
completely unplayable before the Renegade pack came out. That it was
This is true.
dragged along.
Yeah, any unfortunate who's not looked at the Renegades pack, the drag along rule has been adjusted to basically mean if it's a character mount, that the unit that has the drag along rule can suddenly be put within a unit of infantry.
Screaming
and this,
bells.
yeah, this harks
well,
back
yeah.
to the good old days of being able to take a Cauldron of Blood and stick it in a unit of Witch Elves. Now,
The good old days, was it?
The good old days, correct.
Yeah.
I will also point out that I've maybe played this group of models on a board 4 times, maybe 5 if I'm exceptionally lucky, since I've built, painted, sorted everything out. And that's a feels bad for me because it's certainly I've never really had the opportunity to get them out.
Hang on a minute.
And then
Take us back to 8th edition and tell us why we refused to play this.
Well,
as
it was
an
generally
explanatory
because I ran it with Hellebron, and Hellebron in 8th edition was truly spectacularly broken. She was initiative 10, always strikes first with some insane number of attacks, but she'd also strike at strength 10, and she was weapon skill 8 or 9. So it used to be if you quite literally came into contact with the Cauldron, whatever you had, no matter what it was, with how good an armor or ward save would evaporate. And the unit
I just love playing that all day.
Even the unit itself, there were a lot more passive rules with the Cauldron of Blood in 8th edition, where it gave a lot of passive effects to the unit and those sorts of things, where it doesn't necessarily do that anymore. But it was definitely something that needed a bit of a closer look at the close of 8th edition. But anyway, the point of having this slide is that it is my hobby slide. And for an extremely long time, my desire has been to have this unit with quite a structured and really thought about base. My army aesthetic when I started collecting Dark Elves, this particular Dark Elf army, was to have it as like it's a raider faction, right? I had lots of Corsairs. I had a bunch of core models, the old Dark Elf infantry, those sorts of things. It was very much a Dark Elf raid, so I wanted to have a lot of them emerging from the surf. And I'm now in the process of recreating that with this unit of Witch Elves and the Cauldron of Blood. The Cauldron of Blood is the only thing that's not properly based at the moment, and everything else I'm just making do. And the intent ultimately will have it look like this is a group of Witch Elves who've just poured off the side of a ship and pushed their cauldron with them. And they're emerging out of the surf to cause absolute terror and havoc on the battlefield. So that's going to be lots of water effects. Anyone who's seen my dragon or my Pegasus knows that I have my Charybdis, in fact, knows that I have a fondness for water effects, and they really fascinate me, the ways of using them and putting them together. And so my hobby project at the moment, while I'm waiting on Alex's forbearance while he gets his printer calibrated and his demon army printed, until such time as he starts printing me Knights of the White Wolf again, my hobby focus is to get these witches up and ready, because it will very likely be what I will bring to the next OldHammer.
To June.
I feel like it's...
Do you need to rebase them all?
Yeah, I
or
was going to
those
say,
on
like,
the 20s?
Is that cauldron glued to that base, or
It is not. So the cauldron is only blue tacked on, because that is I think that's a 50 by 75.
right?
And the base that they've allowed for the cauldron in the Renegades pack is 75 by 100.
Nice.
Which
So
is
it won't
much
overhang
more.
like that.
No, it won't overhang. So it's a slightly bigger base. And granted, like I've got them on a very old movement tray. That was a movement tray that used to fit all of them when the infantry were on smaller bases.
Yeah.
So I need a bigger movement tray.
Do we need to FDM print you a base? Because is there a 75 by 100 in Old World?
Yeah, there is.
I think there is.
Yeah,
There's
there is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, but
I thought it was 100 by 50. And
I think
then...
one of the Chaos Dwarf units has one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll find one. It'll turn up.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I need a new movement tray, and I need to sort of work on those and try and scope it out. So I'm in the planning process of what that looks like if I'm trying to retain the bases that the witches are on, because it was a huge fucking pain in the ass to take them from 20 mils to 25 mils already, and I put them and based them and everything back when, you know, things weren't quite so skewed against Dark Elves. But now with Renegades, things are coming back.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Looking good. Okay. The first of my demons have arisen. So, I'm chasing down that best painted at some stage. It'll happen
Using
once.
every shortcut you possibly can.
Well, I don't know. So I've done the contrast. I've done the non-contrast. Now I'm using the airbrush. So this is the airbrush plus oil paints army, right?
It would be nice to play an army that doesn't have any detail. Yeah.
Yes. Well. The thing is about demons, not much armor to paint, right? So airbrush is great on there, but
it is.
What I wanted to get out of this was go for that real color transition mode. The thing is, the difference in my past armies was go contrast paint, then do an oil wash, and you're pretty much battle ready, right? Here, I want to actually do some proper highlighting post that. The thing is about the oil washes, you have to leave them to dry for like 3 days, 4 days before I can paint on it. In my background, I have my 7 Furies that have been oiled 2 days ago. They're waiting 1 more day before I can start with the acrylics on top. I'm sure someone will come up and say it's fine. I just want to be sure. So I've needed the lead time up until June that I need to get stuff printed now, painted,
print
oiled.
These, not the White Wolf stuff, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
correct.
Absolutely. King Fat is currently on the printer.
Amazing.
Himself. A lot of tentacles in this 3D model, which is going to be an interesting...
I hope you went with the one that I suggested that you go with, because I feel that's going to be...
It is the one. It is
fabulous.
Absolutely the one.
Lots of delicate pinks and really uncomfortable flesh colors, and
Yes.
I look forward to when Alex is showcasing that model. My only bitchy comment, these look amazing. My only bitchy comment that I'm just going to say, just because I can't help myself, is I didn't realize that Furies were also, you know, Spider-Men at the same time. But it's nice to have that same color pattern and everything else from your superhero enthusiasm.
Exactly. Well, actually, this was a ChatGPT theme.
Yeah, I think ChatGPT might be obsessed with Marvel, but
Could be.
I mean, all joking aside, I'm insanely jealous that you have the opportunity to do all of this quite advanced paint styles, because it is something that a lot of people just dream of, being able to have access to the types of models and the paints and the tools and everything else. So I am very jealous that you're getting to do this, because they do look amazing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but this was my absurdly basic attempt at some OSL.
Not on the small screen.
And didn't go well. I thought I'd try on the test model some OSL lava. I didn't want to just go typical lava. That's the other thing, right? So I'm going for a chaos energy themed
it looks great
effect rather than army. But the problem was too much on this test model, right? And the other thing was I wanted to try doing a final oil-based highlight. Probably not the right go, but I know that now. So, yeah, I'm very happy. I'm absolutely in love with this indigo oil paint, which is just incredible. And so from the oils, you can get so many different colors and colors themes out of it that every single model you paint can have a slightly different hue from the oil wash that you use, but they can be a pain to use, right? And I'm probably inhaling far too many terps.
If only there was a really good oil washing video somewhere on YouTube that someone could watch.
Correct. Go look at Not Just Mecha. Marco.
Go look at Alex's introduction to dummies, and if you can tell the moment at which the fume inhalation got the better of him, then you'll win a prize.
Actually, to be fair, you should go look at that video because there's some great comments from clearly actual artists that know their stuff on paint brands, the use of varnish, professional versus student, etc. Which is actually more in the comment section than in the video.
I'd like to give out one shout out on that. There's a guy called Vince Venturella.
Yes,
and he's
the OG.
He's known for being big in the AOS community, but he's also like a massive Golden Demon level painter.
Chris, I was watching him 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Probably 15 years ago.
He's still going. The most important thing about him is he updates his tutorial videos every couple of years. So you jump on his channel, and I guarantee you, the video that you watched 10 years ago, he's redone it with possibly new paints, new styles, new techniques.
Yep.
That guy has almost every technique available somewhere on his channel.
But also that classic of, oh my god, there's like 15 different silver paints. Which one's the best?
Yeah.
Guaranteed Vince has a video.
Yeah.
Different varnishes, different everything, which is great. Now, once again, we just want to point out that this is a Warhammer The Old World podcast that we've been talking about. So, Chris...
Look, all right.
What is going on, mate?
The caveat
Again.
The caveat to this one is I'm getting closer, okay? I'm getting closer. These are Dark Elves. I'm not that far off. The scale is way off, but the theme is there. So, yes, it's War Master. It's a hobby system that I've been passionate about for a long time, and I haven't been able to play it. So I finally got a 3D printer a few years ago, and I went, you know what? I'm going to be the guy. I printed my mates a bunch of armies, handed piles of resin over to them, and said, we're playing this game. I've finally gotten around to the stage of actually starting to paint them. So I've settled on like a purple Dark Elf
classic.
theme. Classic.
Yep.
The one with the gold on it is the washed one. Obviously, I haven't done the basing. At this scale, it's more about picking certain details to highlight than it is.
Yeah, like the gold.
So, the other thing to note with these is, I think you have to start with a black base because everything is so small. There's all these little nooks and crannies. If you start from a black base, if I miss a part,
it's not a big deal.
I'm never going to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing is, these don't look amazing here. A picture about another 20 stands of these guys in big clumps of units. It looks incredible on the table.
So War Master. So context for anyone who's not heard of it is the actual army size version of like the big mass battles version of sort of Warhammer Fantasy. Is that a correct characterization?
Pretty much, yeah.
And I'll point out, I feel a bit hurt, Chris, that you haven't printed me a War Master army to play with you.
You never asked. You never asked.
You never told me you were printing them. Anyway,
Chris, even though we're talking about Old World, are you saying that you're the War Master Club in Sydney? I would have thought there would absolutely be some diehards still going.
What got the hobby juices flowing was there's a big event called CanCon in January every year.
I knew you were going to say that.
Mate, I was originally from Canberra. I grew up at CanCon, basically. The last couple of years...
Is there any game that's not played at CanCon?
It'd be a stretch to not be played at CanCon. The thing is, though, with the rise of 3D printing, and in particular, the ever-expanding base of STLs out there, we are living in a golden age of War Master. And that was evident at CanCon for the last 3 years. War Master has been there. It's been on tables. They've probably had, I want to say, up to 30 players playing it. Which, for a game that hasn't been supported for like 20 years, is kind of crazy. Yeah. And it just got the hobby juices flowing, and I was like, I have to do this. Back to the old world, I will say that I am waiting...
for Battlefleet Gothic, yes.
Yes, correct. But no, I am waiting a bit for Cathay, but also this part of the year is a little bit busy for me, and it's quite hard for me to get to events, particularly on a Saturday.
Yeah.
That kind of kills my momentum a little bit on doing like old world hobby when I know that I can't really attend the events that I want to attend. It frees up a bit later, and I go full back into.
Chris, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
There's a number of guys from the local scene that have said the exact same thing. You know, they've gone back into soccer season, rugby season, etc. Whether it's for themselves or their kids.
Oh, the kids, yeah.
The kids.
So,
yes.
And I know that the 2+ guys have moved their events to Sundays as well. Maybe pass that feedback on to Michael and the team. Maybe we'll see the one after June on a Sunday.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So just to pivot back to the models for a second, you don't quite get a sense of how small they are, and I certainly didn't for a second, because you see the paints in the background. It's just like, oh yeah, they're pretty small. This is the size of the stand that they're on. Yeah, there you go. There you go. No longer than the joint of your finger. Those
unbelievable.
They are tiny and adorable.
I guess a GW paint pot is probably a pretty good size. Right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That
They're
is
fabulous.
how big they are.
And then to see
the size of a GW paint pot.
Yeah, to see that on a board, to see full armies of that on a board, it's one of the things like I always loved Epic.
I will get a photo. I'll stop sharing and I'll get a photo.
And I always loved Epic, and I am quite attracted to the Adeptus Titanicus system for the same reasons that it's big models and little tiny models and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm excited to see pictures and things of that army in action. It'll be.
I think the crazy thing is, so the shields were blank and the banners were blank. I've never done this before, but I'm gonna try and freehand symbols on the shields and on the banners.
You don't just want to get a whole bunch of transfers and do it.
Where am I going to get 10 mil Dark Elf transfers?
You can find them.
I probably could find them. But no, I do want to try and freehand some Dark Elf symbols on there.
You're mad.
That'd be great.
You're mad. You'll do two
like,
little sections of them, and you'll be like, I'm miserable.
I hate all of this.
Yeah.
Now, this is a blast from the past, right here. Now,
look at that steam tank.
10mm scale.
Yeah. But I still remember, when we were little lads running around GW, that this was being played. That War Master book is an iconic piece of artwork right there. So you can see, look at the size of that.
I think one of the craziest things about it was, I'm gonna forget the name. Was it Alessio Calvatore? Was that the old fantasy rules writer?
Yes, I've got this picture of him in that classic GW red shirt.
Yeah.
So in probably some of the White Dwarves are sitting in my garage.
The guy that wrote this, he no longer works at GW. He floats around this industry. I think he recently helped with Trench Crusade. Someone did an interview with him, I think last year.
Yeah.
And they told him, do you know War Master is not only still played, there's a community edition of the rules, which is what I play. And there's all these like new armies and STLs that have been released. So his mind was kind of blown that this system that basically stopped being supported, I reckon, close to 20 years ago, is still kind of going and thriving. Yeah.
Now, Chris, you see the horrors, they have individual details highlighted, so you don't have any excuse.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'll whip out my 000 paintbrush.
Chris, just on that note, again, we're going off track so far off Old World, but Trench Crusade seems to be taking the world by storm. Lots of comments on that. I heard that it was the Mordheim designer crew that actually moved on from GW, moved on to, I believe, is Trench Crusade made by the same guys from Infinity?
No, I don't think so. No, it's definitely got, I think, one of the rules writers from Mordheim.
It's definitely the rules writers from Mordheim.
I think, did John Blanche do some of the artwork for it? Like, there's a lot of big
industry heavy hitters that have touched it.
for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think if I've been looking at some of the videos of the demo tables that they've done at Adepticon, it looks like a fantastic grimdark skirmish game
for sure,
with great models. So
anyway, back to the old world.
Back to the old world. Well, that's it, lads. That's it. We started on old world with Cathay. We've somehow ended up on
something completely different.
on not only a game that's properly dead, but has probably no chance of coming back except for in a community fashion. So,
love it. All right. Well,
Love
let's say thank you so much again for watching. If you've made it to this point, we very much appreciate
no
you.
one is listening.
One thing that I'm going to sneak in at the very end of the video, hobby wise, just hoping that no one notices. Yeah, last time we talked a little bit about AK Terrains and their products and that sort of thing.
Apology video.
There is no apology because it was in ignorance. But I will say, yeah, we've heard a little bit about I won't even call it a controversy. The pretty ridiculous and deplorable things that their design and marketing team, the incidents as we might call them.
Not a mistake by Clear.
Yeah, decided to do, and we recognise that, and just wanted to say that we
never getting sponsored by them.
No, I mean we certainly won't be asking for it moving into the future. But we'll attempt to be a touch more sensitive to those sorts of things in the future. We appreciate the one person who dropped a comment and didn't condemn us last time. But dropped a comment saying maybe you should have a bit of a closer look at this in the future. But anyway, on that happy note, thank you so much. Well, it's been a pleasure as always.
Shout out, sorry.
Oh yes, please.
As per usual, big thanks to 25 Creative for the lovely background slides that you see, all the logos. Really helps keep our kind of whole look cohesive, despite 4 idiots running the channel.
We're gonna shift that plug to the start of the videos.
We are.
I think moving forwards.
Why do we not have the logo on the slides at the start?
I think that's something we can argue about after the video. But anyway, thank you 25 Creative. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, Alex and Chris. We will catch you on the next video.
Take care.
Yeah.